Good morning. My name is Rashné Jehangir, and I am the founding director of the First Generation Institute and an associate professor in the College of Education and Human Development. I welcome you today to the First Generation Institute's biennial conference at the intersections of first-gen identity and structural change. I wanted to start today by telling you a little bit about the history of how we came to be in this place and time. And talk a little bit about the First Gen Institute's design and structure. I launched the Institute in 2017 to serve as a hub, a community, and a bridge between research and practice. While the biannual conference that coincides with National First Generation Day is our best known event, we have continued to cultivate intentional collaborations and tailored trainings with campus partners ranging from the graduate school to the college and the schools, and from plant pathology to bridge to the doctorate. Each of our campus conferences has focused on scaffolded themes and has sought to build a substantive, asset-based conversation around the complexity of first-generation students that speaks to gaps in research, policy, and practice. In 2018, we began with a call to making an institutional commitment in our first conference, followed by a deep data dive on the situation that COVID students were facing during COVID. In 2021, our annual conference focus was unpacking inequities through an intersectional lens to understand the ways in which racism and classism impact first-generation college students. And today, we underscore the continued need for structural changes as we consider the changing demographics of middle and high school students, both in our state, but also nationwide, and await what appears to be very viable threats to affirmative action. Each curated session today brings you voices, data, praxis across students, alumni, faculty, and staff, thanks to the labor and love of our campus-wide steering committee, without whom none of this would be possible. I'd like to just share a little bit about our campus community practitioners and scholars who have been part of building the First Gen Institute. So if you just feature their names on the next slide. This group of scholars represents folks from across our campus. They've each been involved in advising the themes and focus of each conference, co-designing the sessions. They are your colleagues, they are your peers, they are your supervisors. Many of them are first generation themselves. And if we were in a room together, there would be very loud applause. So I invite you to express your gratitude to them via the chat. So today, I welcome those of you who have been with us from the very beginning and those of you who are newcomers. Before we move to the Dean's welcome, I just want to recognize that here in Minnesota, we are on Dakota and Anishinaabe land. The river that winds through the campus links to the sacred sites of the Dakota people's origin in Badote, where the Minnesota River joins the Mississippi. Indigenous people are here and they're thriving. However, land acknowledgements are only a very small part of supporting Indigenous communities, and ways in which we can translate this into solidarity include donating time and money to Indigenous-led organizations, amplifying the voices of Indigenous people, leading grassroots change movements in our own community and in our state, and returning land. To that end, I note that November is National Native American Heritage Month, and also November 17th is Give to the Max. So consider an Indigenous organization you can support. One that I feature is the Native Governance Center. It's a Native-led nonprofit dedicated to assisting Native nations in strengthening their governance systems and capacity to exercise sovereignty and land back. This is also an opportunity to elevate voices of local Indigenous scholars and change makers. And with their permission, I would like to share the work of our own Assistant VP in the Graduate School Diversity Office, Dr. Kari Bazemore-Jones, and her co-author, Meryl Dunn, in the Journal of Student Affairs, Research and Practice. This piece, The Modern Era of Indigenous College Student Support in Primarily White Institutions, has significant relevance to our campus. I also featured the dissertation of Dr. Kelly Collins, who is currently the Director of Education in OED, but has been working with the First Gen Institute since its inception in 2017. Her dissertation, The Ambivalence of Access, Tuition-Free Public Policy, and College Access for Low-Income Students, employs Indigenous frameworks to understand college-going choices for first-generation college students. Both offer powerful lenses and approaches for us as scholar practitioners. I am now delighted to introduce a key supporter of the First Generation Institute, my dean, the Dean of the College of Education and Human Development, Michael Rodriguez, fifth generation Minnesotan, first generation college grad, who will share a few remarks before we begin our keynote today. Michael, you were with us on stage when all this began in 2018, well before you were dean, and you are still with us. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Rashné. I really appreciate the introduction. Good morning, everyone. Very happy to be here. I am Michael Rodriguez, Dean of the College of Education and Human Development, and happy to welcome everyone to the 2022 First Gen Institute. And I really appreciate the subtitle here, At the Intersections of First Gen Identity and Structural Change. And I'd like to talk a little bit about that because I am facing that personally and professionally as first gen myself, and now being at a place where I have a leadership role around structure and structure change. The University of Minnesota and our college has footprints in many areas across the state. We live, learn, work alongside indigenous communities who, of course, have been here long before us. These communities have complex and multi-layered histories. We continue to learn about the relationships peoples of sovereign nations have with their homelands that are deeply rooted in cultural history and spirituality, grounded in the wisdom that they are related to all peoples and everything Mother Earth has to offer. We are all related. This interconnectedness brings a responsibility to care for one another and to care for the lands that provide us with so much. This interconnectedness creates space for belonging. This interconnectedness encourages us to be generous with each other. I am a fifth generation Minnesotan on my mother's side of the family, third generation on my father's side, but first on both sides to get a college degree. And now I sit here as a first gen dean. CEHD is committed to creating access for all we have to offer, including educational programs, employment opportunities, resources and services, and of course our partnerships. When I became dean, we created the Access Scholarship, a college-wide scholarship that any donor can contribute to with a donation of any size. Oftentimes we have donors that think my $5 donation isn't going to make a difference, but it does when we aggregate all of those across all of our donors and create a college-wide access scholarship. We're actually focusing on this year in our fundraising efforts. Give to the Max Day as another opportunity to contribute to greater access. Some of you may know the University of Minnesota Native American Promise Tuition Program expands upon a full tuition waiver program that has been on the Morris campus for a long time through Minnesota statute, given the property's history with Native American boarding schools. Beginning this year, the Promise Tuition Program provides tuition relief for many other American Indian students who graduate from a Minnesota high school or transfer from tribal colleges, and it applies to all 5 campuses of the University of Minnesota now. Last year, we established our first endowed scholarship for American Indian students with a commitment to support students who start their collegiate careers at the 2-year tribal colleges. These funds can cover unmet need, especially housing and living expenses. We know that there are multiple financial burdens on families and young people to come to college, and we are trying to eliminate those to further greater access. This fall, we actually admitted 5 Indigenous educators seeking doctorate degrees in the Department of Curriculum and Instruction. The department reconceptualized what graduate education means to create a doctoral program that was meaningful to the Indigenous scholars. We had to think outside the box about what rigor means and how to incorporate Indigenous disciplinary knowledge and practices. And I'm really proud of the faculty that came together and made that happen. We are working with educators at tribal colleges to co-construct a curriculum for early childhood education, creating a new pathway for tribal college transfer students seeking baccalaureate degrees in early childhood education with an Ojibwe language emphasis. Associated with this effort is the new Dakota language classroom at our Child Development Lab School. This provides a unique Dakota language experience and an immersion experience for preschool children. We also recently established a new Indigenous Education Materials Resource Center located on campus in our Pike Hall. We hope that this will become a place for faculty, staff, students, and community partners to come together, learn, share, and create resources for educators across the state and, of course, across the globe. And of course, we continue to increase our investments in the TRIO programs, including Upward Bound, Student Support Services, and McNair. These have, for a long time now, for decades, provided a unique support system for the pipeline of education opportunities from high school through college to graduate and professional school. And of course, that includes many students who are first in their families to go to college. And I can't stop without mentioning our own First Gen Institute. We have dedicated new resources to expand our efforts to further develop the reach and the scope of First Gen Institute. My own goal is to identify dedicated space for this effort so that the First Gen Institute can be a place where colleagues can gather to move this important work forward. These are just a few examples of how we together are changing structures. We are in the business of preparing the world's next generation of leaders. And to do this well, we continue to prepare the institution. We continue to prepare our college to be ready for students. Every student can be successful. And we acknowledge that students we need to lead the world for future generations are unquestionably First Gen. So let's have a great experience in this First Gen Institute this year, especially in these times of continued uncertainties and deep frustrations. Let's be compassionate, generous, good relatives, and let's respect and support all our relations. Adelante. Rashné.
Thank you so much, Dean Rodriguez. Thank you for your heart, your encouragement, your advocacy, and your action. All of those things work together to move things forward.